Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Today we have a new set of crazy stories for you to enjoy. But before we start, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Boss is going to keep asking me to work shifts when I take time off? How about I take a permanent vacation? This is the story of my former employer. I work in the Northeast U.S., and my employer at the time was a very small company. Boss and 5 employees in a very specific industry where 90% of our work was on construction sites, and finding a well-qualified person in this very specific industry is a very, very hard thing to do. My boss was the kind of boss that every employee hates. Corners were cut every possible way in order to keep overhead costs down. On top of that, he would constantly overbook on jobs, like signing contracts for 6 projects during the same week, knowing full well he only has 5 employees, which would result in the employees often working 14-hour days or more, which really sucks when you're on salary. No overtime pay. His worst attribute by far was approving time off, then during your time off calling or texting you asking if you'd be willing to work a day or cut your vacation short. Sometimes he'd even ask you to move your time off to the next week or next month when the workload lightens up. Hint, it never lightened up due to his constant overbooking. After working at this company for 6 years, I got used to all the aforementioned annoyances. But then things changed. My son was born. In the months leading up to his birth, I made it very clear that I'd be taking a 5-week unpaid leave of absence once he arrives. The state we're in allows new parents to take up to 8 weeks of unpaid leave. I told my boss that I know 8 weeks would be a huge strain on such a small company, so I was willing to take 5 weeks. But those 5 weeks would be completely off the grid, meaning don't call me, don't text me. If you're going to ask me to do anything work-related, the answer will be no, so don't bother. I'm going to be spending time with my family. He 100% agreed. Fast forward to my son's birth. He was born on a Friday, and after a short stay in the NICU, don't worry, he's fine, was released on Monday, and we took him home. Tuesday morning, next day, I wake up to a missed call, an email, and 3 texts, all from my boss asking me to call him back ASAP. For reasons still unknown to me to this day, I call him back, and he tells me there's a slight emergency. Code speak for he screwed up the scheduling, and he has a job with no employee at it. He asked if I could maybe come into work that day and maybe work a couple more days that week until he finds someone to cover it. I lost it. I literally felt something in my neck snap and unleashed a verbal assault on him that I still feel bad about now, a year later. I ended my rant with an apology. As much of a D move as it was for him to be calling me in that situation, it was still unprofessional of me to say what I said to him. Obviously, he was not a big fan of what I said, and after a small rant of his own ended with the sentences that made the whole story possible. He said, "You've got a pretty good gig at this company that most people your age should be thankful for. I'd be impressed if you could find a better job in this field, because I've been doing this for 30 years. And I know how small this industry is, and trust me, good jobs like yours don't come along very often. Think about that." So we ended the call, and I did exactly what he said. I thought about it. After thinking about it for 30 seconds, I got out of bed, sat down in front of my computer, and started looking at job postings. 5 weeks later, my time off came to an end, and my first day back, I came into work, walked into my boss's office, and handed him a piece of paper. "Boss, what's this?" Me. "I thought about what you said, about how you'd be really impressed if I could find a better job than the one I have here." So I did. My boss reads over what was handed him, a job offer from a competitor for the exact same job I was performing, but at a 25% higher salary, an extra week of paid vacation compared to what I had, and a stipulation that company policy was that work hours are capped at 8 per day, meaning that once I hit 8 hours on a job, I pack up and leave it until tomorrow. No exceptions. Boss, "Well, then can I, have a day to crunch some numbers to come up with a counteroffer?" Me. "No, don't bother. I just wanted you to see it because I knew you wouldn't have believed me otherwise." I gave my 2 weeks notice and left for whatever job site I was on that day. That was a year ago, and I couldn't be happier with my new job. I get to spend lots of time with my boy, and that's the best job perk there is. For all you bosses and managers out there, don't F with your employees, especially the good ones. Treat them how you'd want to be treated. Most employees don't quit their jobs. They quit their bosses. And our next story. Open the effing door, you four-eyed twit! Okie dokie. I deliver home heating oil in a very rural and mostly flat part of the UK. In my delivery area, there are many large drainage channels, or dikes in the local lingo. The roads are often very narrow and single-track and frequently run alongside these dikes, separated by only a very narrow grass verge. No safety barrier. Anywho, this one day in the depths of winter, it was below freezing, there had been a light spattering of snow, and there was a thin scum of ice on the water in the dike. I just finished doing a customer's delivery and was winding in the hose prior to collecting payment and departing. My truck was completely blocking the road as there was nowhere for me to pull it off the road. We are limited by the length of a delivery hose, and blocking the road is common and legally acceptable as long as we work quickly and safely. So I was just waiting for the customer to finish writing the check for their oil when this large Mercedes pulls up behind my truck, and the driver immediately starts leaning on the horn and shouting and swearing and shouting at me to move that effing truck out of the way now. My usual response when faced with similar behavior is to blank the swearer and pretend they don't exist. Being 6'3" and 285 pounds helps keep most people at bay. I ignored Mr. Shouty Man and finished up with my customer. The customer said to me, "Ignore him. He's well known in the village for being a bit of a jerk." I said goodbye and got in my truck. As I was putting away my paperwork prior to driving off, I happened to glance at the driver's side mirror, the same side of the truck as the dike, and saw Mr. Shouty Man storming up the side of the truck with a tire iron in his hand. Oh crap, thinks I, and immediately hit the central locking button, locking myself in the cab. Next thing I know, Mr. Shouty Man has climbed up onto the step, is hanging off the mirror arm with one hand and brandishing the tire iron with the other, all while shouting, "Open the door, you four-eyed C!" I wear spectacles when driving? Oh, the wit of the man. LOL. Cue malicious compliance. He told me to open the door, so I did. But as I did so, I kicked it open. He lost his grip on the mirror arm and was flung backwards into the dike up to his chest in freezing cold, filthy water. I calmly started my engine and drove off. As I left, I looked in the mirror to see the guy floundering around chest deep in the icy water, dressed in a business suit. I called the customer who'd witnessed everything, and happily, they said that they would give a statement to whoever needed one, confirming I acted in self-defense. Then I made a fairly difficult call to my boss and told him what happened, and he said, "I'll await his call with interest." No bullocking, nothing. When I got back to the yard that evening, I asked my boss what happened, and apparently no call of complaint was made that day or ever. You know, I'm not surprised he didn't complain. Road rage attacks are a serious matter in the UK. And our next story. You want my most experienced employee? Well, okay. A few years ago, I worked for Company X as the manager of some key administrative staff and had a chance to serve up some malicious compliance. A bit of background. At the time of the MC, I had 4 employees. Generic employee, rockstar, new guy, dipcrap, who could not be fired as he was related to some very senior managers. Nepotism at its best. So we worked closely with the ops team, where one of our responsibilities was to perform certain tasks, without which the entire operation would grind to a halt. At the time, there'd been some expansion and a second shift was introduced. Thus, new guy was hired. Like any time something new happened, there were a lot of teething issues. At the time, dipcrap and generic employee were covering the new afternoon shift, rotating weekly, while I had new guy learning the ropes on the morning, where the workload was a lot heavier, with rockstar and generic employee / dipcrap on their week of mornings. Anyhow, as mentioned, there were some problems with introducing a new shift, and the ops manager, who I'd worked with in the past and we didn't really get along well, did as most of our managers do when something isn't going right. Passed the blame over to our end. To be fair, some truth to it. However, dipcrap was a minor cause at best. One thing I didn't like about ops manager was she was the type to go behind your back and be nothing but smiles to your face. At the time, ops manager wanted Rockstar on her shift because he was the type of person who would constantly go above and beyond to make things happen. Read, fix her problems. Instead of asking me if it was possible, ops manager went to our boss's boss to complain that everything that was going wrong was due to my department and how she needed my most experienced employee on her shift. The next day, I got an email from the boss with ops manager, my boss, and her boss copied in. Please ensure your most experienced employee is on the afternoon shift to help ops manager. I was a little annoyed. I must have spent about 10 minutes just looking at that email, my temper consistently rising the entire time, until it finally dawned on me. Ops manager wanted Rockstar, but the request was for my most experienced employee. What ops manager didn't realize was that Dipcrap had started about 2 months before Rockstar and a few years before generic employee. Suddenly, I was in a great mood. It must have had the biggest crap-eating grin on my face as I typed my reply. Hi, the boss. We are, of course, happy to help ops manager with the multitude of issues that is happening within her shift. As such, Dipcrap, being my most experienced employee, will spend the next 8 weeks working only in ops manager shift. My boss and I had a great laugh over it, as it was essentially career suicide to complain about Dipcrap. There was nothing ops manager could do but grin and bear it. I feel sorry for generic employee. He's like Guy from Galaxy Quest. I don't even get a real name. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.